I'd like to welcome everybody to the October 20th, 2015 meeting of the Sarasota County School Board. Anybody wishing to speak during our hearing of citizens segment, if you'd fill out a card in the back of the room, bring them up to Zoe Marshall and I will call you forward at that time and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I'd also like to welcome Crystal Griffin and Saria Kong, coordinators for the Community Youth Development Leadership Programs, and the STAR students in the audience today. Would y'all stand? STAR stands for Students Taking Active Roles, which is a training You can sit back down. Thank you. STAR stands for Students Taking Active Roles, which is a training program created to encourage youth to take active roles in their community. And some of our staff members, we have a executive session after the board meeting, but some staff members will stay afterwards and answer questions for you guys. If you would please now stand for, are they here? I didn't see an ROTC. Please stand for the salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time we're going to move on to our hearing of citizens portion of the meeting. I do have 15 speakers, so I'm going to be very strict on the 3-minute time limit. When I call your name, if you'll come to this podium, you'll see a light over in front of Ms. Marshall come on green. It'll go to yellow in 2 minutes. And when it turns red, your time is up. Our first speaker is Tracy Roll. Raleigh? Sorry about that. Won't be the last name I mispronounced today.
I was actually glad to be here for the workshop today. I really like the idea of the restorative justice. I think it sounds fantastic. And my understanding is that the principals and some teachers have been told about this. Parents haven't heard anything about it. So I don't know where it actually stands with implementation. As a parent, I am really interested in this. I want nothing more than for our kids to be in school and not at home. I had a nephew that spent enough time in out-of-school suspensions that I've seen, why it's not beneficial. Couple things. I'm really happy to hear that we're blaming teachers who haven't had behavior changes. They simply do not have time in the current academic climate when every minute is scheduled. I lost where I was. I think we need to make sure that we're not really letting the public think that this isn't going to interfere with teachers' times because, let's face it, they want data. Data doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen, by mysteriously sending it in vibes. These teachers have to do the work to provide the data. That's going to take more time for more data that the teachers don't have that's expending into their personal lives. Teaching shouldn't be a 90-hour-a-week job, not at the rate that our teachers are making. And if disruption, I know that this does work. Dr. Mary Anderson was our principal at Imagine Elementary just for 1 year. She's from Minnesota. The circle up. The circle up is something that she did in her schools, which I found to be very interesting when I was researching when they were hiring her. But again, we can't make this like it isn't going to interfere with something, because if you're in the middle of a language arts lesson, keep in mind those lessons are scripted. They have to have X amount done today. But if they have to take that time to circle up, it's going to take time away from that scripted lesson. Again, I do think this is good. Some talk about social media. I think some of the social media and that instant gratification could be eliminated if our schools were fully technology provided instead of bring your own device. When you bring your own device, there's no, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. There's no control. The teachers can't control it. You know, when the student has their own device, they can do whatever they want. I get text messages from my kid when he walks between classes. Yeah, I know they're using them. Frankly, I don't tell him not to because I get some really good stuff from him on those days. One quick thing. I really, really appreciated the inference to the school to prison pipeline because that is something we absolutely need to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lucy Gallo.
No green light yet. Good afternoon. There it is. Good afternoon. My name is Lucy Gallo, and I have been sworn. I'm a principal with DPFG, a national consulting firm specializing in fiscal and economic impact analysis, and I'm representing the Manatee Sarasota BIA. As outlined in my recent letter, the overstatement of the population growth rate and projected enrollment in the long-range plan have resulted in the district planning for new schools that will not be needed, especially in the next 10 years, at the expense of much-needed capital improvements at existing schools. Furthermore, the impact fee study at this time does not meet the dual rational nexus test for a legally defensible impact fee. The long-range plan assumes an annual growth rate of 1.1% over the next 10 years, a rate that has not been experienced in the county since 2007 and is double the actual growth rate over the last 5 years. A keynote speaker at the Urban Land Institute fall meeting last week stated projections by leading economists indicate growth in the number of seniors age 65 and older nationally is projected to increase by 1/3 over the next 10 years. Bieber, the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, University of Florida, has been studying this trend extensively because of the surge in senior population expected in Florida and has issued several relevant publications over the past few months. Over the next 20 years, Bieber projects 72% of Sarasota County's population growth will be attributable to the 70-plus age cohort. Projections of public school students in the long-range plan and impact fee update are grossly overstated because these well-documented demographic trends and projections for the state of Florida and for Sarasota County were not taken into account. I know it is frustrating to have a financial plan before you that needs substantial revision, but that's where you are. Putting the brakes on the process to get it right requires strength and conviction, but there simply isn't a shortcut. Please let me know if I can help. Thank you.
Thank you. Ivory Crowfoot.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ivory Crowfoot. I'm here on behalf of Fred Durr of Frederick Durr and Company. There was a letter that was provided to you that he had written. I just want to read it to the board. Dear Mr. Kovach, I am responding to the proposed reinstatement of the education impact fee for 2016 for Sarasota County School District. It has been suggested that the moratorium on this new home tax end with the reinstatement of impact fees due to the increase in volume of development in Sarasota County. Although our volume of work has improved, it is currently far below the level it was in 2004 and 2005. We have seen modest increases over the last few years, and it is my hope that we will see this continued progress over the next 2 years, but that is very uncertain. I feel reinstating this tax on a new home construction will put a financial burden on a very volatile industry. This negative impact will be felt by the entire construction community. All construction contractors are still feeling the effects of the talent drain on our community that started during the recession and has continued for several years. It has become almost impossible to find skilled workers for all aspects of construction. We need to do what we can to encourage talented employees to move back to the area. An added tax burden does not seem appropriate or beneficial on our working community at this time. I am asking that the board extend the moratorium on these impact fees for 2 years in order to allow our vital industry the opportunity to fully recover. Fred Durr. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Hounahan.
Good afternoon. My name is David Cunahan. I've signed a speaker's card. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I happen to be in the home building industry as well as a former president of the local building industry association. I currently work for Emerald Homes. We're the luxury brand of D.R. Horton, which is the largest builder in the United States and one of the largest in the area and in Florida. Excuse me. Although I wasn't born in this area, I've been here since 1991 and have enjoyed being in the industry in that entire time. I did not make it through the last boom and downturn. I had a home building company that was acutely affected by the downturn in that we had to close our doors. And so now I'm working for another builder. I would urge you not to impose the impact fees for these reasons. Although prices have gone up on homes, the cost of labor and materials have in many cases outpaced that. There is a shortage of land and, as Ivory mentioned, of labor and those materials. So those costs have more than increased over what we've been in many cases able to raise our prices. Also, if you're going to increase the impact fee by roughly $4,000, remember that has a retail impact to the buyers, which I'm most concerned for the affordable housing aspect of that. We happen to build a product line called Express Homes that targets very specifically the people in the affordable range, say $150,000. On a $150,000 home, that's roughly a 4% price increase that the buyer is going to absorb. It's not just the builders that are going to pay this. This is going to be passed on to the buyers. And that will affect the affordability of the homes, which means that it'll be harder to get workers into the area to take the jobs that we so desperately need in the construction business as well. So I urge you to think about that. Although the prices have increased, incomes have not. So every penny that is added to the cost of a home will affect people's ability to buy those homes, which affects our entire economy, as anybody who lived here over the last 10 years will plainly see. Thank you for your time.
Chris Gore.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Gore. I represent WCI Communities. We are a home builder as well. I am a Florida native. I would echo everything that he just stated. And what our new starts, the overall supply is still dragging. And like he just stated, I mean, our labor costs are consistently rising, material costs are rising, and labor just in general is an issue for us to get the work done, which is continually increasing the prices with that. So I would urge you not to pile on the cost of the homes, which inevitably is going to get passed on to the buyer. I don't think that's really going to do the right thing regarding our economy as we continue to push through this the recession. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Ron.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Ron. I have signed a speaker's card. I'm out here today before you just as the president of the Manatee Sarasota Building Industry Association, but as a lifelong resident of Sarasota, a proud graduate of Sarasota High School. So I understand the importance of a school system to have that'd be a great one for our citizens. But let's talk about, everybody's talking about the cost of what the impact fees do to housing. Let's talk about the cost of impact fees due to your employees. The average teacher's salary in Sarasota County is $51,000. I'm a 28-year veteran of the mortgage lending industry. And in today's world, if you take $51,000, divide that by 12, hit that number by 43%, which is the max lendable person can lend today, that leaves $1,800 for a mortgage, student loans, credit cards, mortgage payments, and everything that goes along with that. So as we pile on these expenses, these progressive taxes onto housing, it does nothing but hurt your employees because their gap, the housing gap and cost of housing goes up, their salaries stay here, they can't afford a home. And we want all of our teachers to be able to live in an affordable home. So what I ask you all to do today is to leave the moratorium in place. Let's look at the numbers again. Let's look at the study again and leave the moratorium in place for at least another 2 years so we can understand the impact that these regressive taxes will have on your employees. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here today.
John Mast.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. For the record, my name is John Mast, and I represent the Manatee Sarasota Building Industry Association. As you know, housing prices, for many reasons, increase. Some are the result of market-driven changes in demand, availability of property, rising household incomes, to name a few. However, the increases that take place on the government and regulatory side of the market, a non-market-driven condition, make it more costly for a builder to deliver a home to its final consumer and artificially increases the cost of housing. Today's vote on the school board's potential levy of impact fees is that governmental, non-market driven increase, an increase on the building industry through taxation and new construction. In fact, the final price of the home to the buyer will go up by more than the increase of the impact fee. Other costs such as commissions and financing charges also rise. This is a non-market driven increase. As a result, these cost increases are passed to the buyer. Board members, you must realize that if an impact fee increases, the overall price of the home will surge and fewer households will be able to afford one, regardless if they are determined as affordable. NEHB and Dr. Crow has estimated that a $1,000 increase in impact fees will raise the price of a house to its final consumer by 25 basis points. NEHB also reports that the impact of each $1,000 price increase would price a new home beyond the financial reach of approximately 1.2 million households nationally. The potential increase of $7,835 as proposed, or the $3,900 and change, would be devastating here to the building industry in Sarasota County. Again, the lifting of the current moratorium on school impact fees would be devastating to the building industry in Sarasota County. We have just left behind the greatest recession of our lifetime. We're still on shaky ground. The smartest minds at the Federal Reserve are still uncertain in raising interest rates, and the stock market is still operating at a panic level. I know I watch the stock market every day. The building industry is the second largest employer and economic driver of the state of Florida behind tourism. In January 2006, there were 22,000 persons employed in the construction industry in Sarasota County. In January 2015, there were only 9,000 persons employed in Sarasota County. Additionally, our consultants have studied your impact fee report and have found many issues that are used as examples of growth are indeed used incorrectly, including population growth rates. Yes, Sarasota County building permits are up from the lows of 2009, but are nowhere near the extremes of 2005 and 2006. The dramatic growth before the recession was unsustainable, and it is unlikely that we will see those again in our lifetime. So allow me to recap. The economy is not completely recovered. Employment is still behind in its recovery. Population growths are not projected to grow exponentially, and building permits are not currently creating a burden on the school system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Langhout. I mispronounced it. Please correct me at the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm David Langhout, and I've been sworn. I work for Coulter, a land developer and home builder, and I've lived in Sarasota County for 12 years. All three of my children have proudly attended our public schools. I'd like to echo Ms. Gallo's comments. I'm concerned that you're about to implement a significant policy change on a very weak report with unjustified assumptions. I urge you to not only continue the moratorium in order to further analyze this report, in order to determine whether this consultant can fix their issues or whether they should really be relied upon going forward at all. There's just too much uncertainty to move forward based on this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Wilson?
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Ed Wilson. I'm the Director of Construction for Heritage Builders West Florida. I'm also the proud husband of a teacher at Ashton Elementary. I'm a lifelong resident of Sarasota County, and I've also been in the building industry my entire life. My father was a builder, and we've continued to carry on the tradition in our house with Heritage Builders West Florida, which is a family-owned business. Much of what we do relies on the budget conscious and raising our home prices by another close to $4,000, or on a retail side, another $5,000 with all the other fees would be very detrimental to not just our business, but to the other people that want to join and move down here into Sarasota County. So with that, I urge the school board to not lift the moratorium, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Huber?
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Huber. I'm the general manager of E.T. McKinsey Company, and I live in South County. My kids attend Sarasota Public Schools. We have benefited as a contractor by building 2 schools in Sarasota County, Riverview High School, site work package $5 million, and recently Venice High School to the tune of about $7 million. So we have benefited from tax dollars in the public school system. At the same time, we are diversified, and we are in the municipal market, currently doing over $17 million worth of work in Sarasota County, and also in the private market, doing fairly well. However, it's been said that the market's recovered, and while that may be true, the market may have started to recover. Contractors have not. Our bonding capacities are still about half of what they were in 2006 and 2007. A lot of that has to do with the cyclical funding that was in place, and when all of that funding went away in 2007, 8, and 9, there wasn't any work. There wasn't municipal work, nor was there public or private work. So we don't support the changing of the moratorium on the impact fees. We believe that they should still be in place, and I would challenge government to look at alternative ways to get funding that is more steady, so we don't go through these cycles of up and down, up and down. We went from having 120 employees in 2007 down to 45 in 2011. Much of them left the industry. They were frustrated because they couldn't make a very consistent living. Went to work in other places. We can't get them back, and we're struggling right now with the workforce, and it's very, very difficult. We need a couple of years at least to be able to replace our equipment. We typically turn our equipment over every 5 to 7 years. We weren't able to do that at all from 2007 to 2013-14. We are starting that process now. For us, it's over a $15 to $20 million investment. And so we've got a lot of work to do to fully recover and get to the point where these impact fees wouldn't hurt us as much. But still, I believe that we need to find an alternative to funding public work, because we still need the money in the downturn. We don't need it to go away. We need a more steady economy in Florida. And so I just appreciate your time, and thank you.
T.J. Nutter.
Good afternoon. I'm T.J. Nutter, and I represent Nutter Custom Construction. But I'm really here today as a representative of my trade partners and my employees. So those are the folks that this fee burdens. And so affordable housing in Sarasota has been a problem, and we talked about it in 04 in the boom in 05. It continues to be a problem, and so adding this burden just exacerbates a problem that already exists. So I would ask that we continue the moratorium until we can see true recovery and continued market improvement. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dan Lobeck.
School board members, the fact is the recovery is now. Pat Neal for several years has had his best years ever. We know construction is booming. It's nonsense to say otherwise. And these fees don't get passed on to the consumer. The developer charges the maximum they can for a house. It comes out of their profits. That's why they're against it. And your staff is telling you you have to have this impact fee that they've recommended, twice what you're even thinking about doing. And half of you think it shouldn't be an impact fee at all because your schools are bursting at the seams. About half of your elementary schools are beyond capacity today. And your consultant says you need several new schools over the next 10 years. You're going to believe your own consultant or the developer's paid person who says you're not going to need any new schools? I mean, obviously you do by the facts. The question is how are you going to pay for them? This proposal for just a bare $2,000 impact fee, which is the only thing you're considering as of this morning, is only 13% of what you're going to need for new school construction over the next 10 years. You want to put 87% of the costs on the backs of the tax-paying public. And unless you raise taxes, which the School Board Association is trying to do at a state level, that means you're going to have to neglect needed maintenance, improvements, technology, safety, and security in our schools. So you're not only cheating the taxpayers, you're cheating the school children who you are supposed to serve. All to do a favor for the big developers who bankroll your campaigns and who give one of you, Mr. Chairman, a job. It's not right. It is scandalous. It is beyond scandalous that the developers have bought themselves a school board. You think people don't care. You think as long as you keep the developers fat and happy, that you're secure in your positions. I would suggest to you that there is a growing realization in our country, in Sarasota, in Florida, and throughout the state and throughout the country, that politics has become corrupt. There's no better evidence of that than what you're about to do this afternoon, and that is adopt an impact fee that's miserably low or no impact fee at all. Doing a favor for the big developers, for the development industry that pays your campaigns, and instead stick it to the taxpayers and neglect the needs of the school children of Sarasota County. Shame on you.
Morgan Bentley.
I always enjoy following my friend Dan Lobeck to the podium. I'm not going to say shame on you. What I am going to do is talk about the merits of the position that's been put before you by your consultants. I think Ms. Gallo did a terrific job. I mean, this is not rocket science. The dual rational nexus test requires two things. It requires a need, and it requires a methodology, and it fails on both counts. We've already been through this. You're sort of why would you go through the effort of even cutting it? You've cut it by half, cut it by a third. You still don't know what the question is. You still don't know, do we need schools next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now? You don't know whether you're going to have 1 kid per 100, 2 kids per 100, 3 kids per 100. You don't know those answers. Until you know those answers, you don't pass the dual rational nexus test at all. And I would say to Mr. Lobeck, who is my friend, by the way, look, we all know that the population is getting older. We all know that Sarasota County is going to get older than most counties. We know that charter schools are taking up more kids. We know that more people are homeschooling. We know there are more private schools. None of those things are in your report. No report that doesn't include those items is a report that you should base a tax on. Remember, this is a tax that only goes to a small percentage of the population, unlike, say, sales tax or income tax where we all pay roughly equally. This is only a subset of an industry that pays this tax. If you sell a house, if you tear a house down and build a new house, you're not going to pay this tax. It's only guys who build one type of house, and that's new construction, that gets hit by this tax. And that's why these rules are so specific. It's a very specific tax that's tied to a very specific need. And this report doesn't address that need. It didn't a month ago when I first came before you, and it doesn't now. You should take the time, keep the moratorium in place, take the time to do this right. Look at redistricting, look at your fish standards and all of that, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that because I heard you loud and clear last time. It's very complicated. But get the answers. Do it right the first time. What do they say in construction? Measure twice and cut once. Do that here. This is not the time to impose the tax for economic reasons, but certainly if you're going to do it right. Take your time. Do it correctly like you would tell your students. Do it right the first time, and we won't have to have any kind of second guessing after the fact by courts or otherwise. So thank you for your time.
Kathy Benz.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Benz, and I'm the president of Kona. I'm sure you've read the letter from Bill Zoller, one of our vice presidents, already, which was sent to you. You've heard significantly from the construction industry and developers. You've not heard many people talking about the welfare of the students. That's your charge, not to take care of the developers, but to take care of the students. To compare our economy and to use as a standard a wild boom period, as everyone here is trying to establish as a midline basis in order to determine what our economy should be like, is one of the primary errors that you can make. The importance of establishing a midline of reality for the development and expansion and attraction of new people to the county of Sarasota should be not based on boom and bust, but it should try to establish an even keel so that we can establish a continuing economy that is predictable. Not to provide your students with the best possible education they can have is the worst crime a society and a family can commit against their children. The one thing we owe our children is the best education they can possibly have. To have them in crowded schoolrooms, inadequate facilities is not the thing that should be your responsibility. Thank you.
Al Stonehouse.
I'm back. I was at your work session last time. I sent you all an email. I hope you all read it. My name is Al Stonehouse. I live in Englewood. The brakes have already been put on. It was mentioned the brakes. Put the brakes on for a couple of years. No. The brakes have been on for 5 years, okay? I'm representing taxpayers. Where are all the taxpayers here? I don't know. When we moved in, we paid impact fees. Except for the last 5 years, everybody had a freebie. Impact fees are going to raise over the next 10 years $168 million. How much is that a year? Come on, 16.8. 16.8. 2 years will pay for an elementary school, which, according to your work session, will be required in about 3 or 4 years in North Venice. You got a free school. It's free money. Point number one. Impact fees are free, and they help the existing taxpayers. That's number one. Number two, growth pays for growth. I'm sorry, builders, but growth pays for growth. You got to pay. People paid in the past. People have to pay in the future. The growth is going to require the new schools. Therefore, growth will pay something, not everything. Also, This is the Board of Ed, BOE. You're not on the BOB, Board of Builders. I mean, we've been outnumbered here 10-1. Builders, I don't even know why they're involved in this. They pass on the costs. And I've heard that they've been complaining about costs. Have you read the papers in the last few years? Every month, builder so-and-so, land fee. He bought it at a foreclosed price for pennies on the dollar. Their land banks are full. Their costs are set. Anybody coming in here now to buy property for housing, hey, there's no land left. It's gone. Okay? Help? A guy driving in a pickup truck is not going to have to pay for affordable housing. There is no affordable housing. But he's not going to have the money for it anyway. So bankers, builders have just in the last month, that was in the paper, 11.5% price increase on housing over the last year. On a $300,000 house, that is worth what? Come on, $34 million. I'm sorry, $33,000. Did a builder ever come to the Board of Ed and say, hey, we had a good year. We're going to give you some money. Here's $2,000. No, they haven't done that. They're not entitled to the...
Thank you, Mr. Steinhaus.
Right.
Pat Neal?
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Pat Neal, 5800 Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. I have signed a card. My belief is that the idea of reinstituting this tax on new homes is flawed for 5 reasons, which I would like to briefly enumerate. First, Mr. Chairman, the data itself is deeply flawed. Your consultant has chosen a growth rate twice the rate of growth which we've had for the last 5 years in Sarasota County. It's inconsistent with our own state's fish score and fish program. That's the program where you'd be allowed to be funded by state funds for school construction or use of PICO funds or use of the FEFP. I was involved at a time with the state funds after a Supreme Court case called Baker v. Carr. At that time, Collier County, our richest county, had $630,000 of non-exempt property evaluation per student, and Levy County had $300,000 worth of non-exempt property evaluation per student. The effect of that case was to balance out our state's property rolls so we had equal education under our state's constitutional mandate. The point that I'm making now is that in 1974 and now, Sarasota County has the second highest property evaluation per student of Florida's 67 counties. The fact is that you have lots of real estate collections and not very many students. This particular county taxes and spends about $200 million more each year than the neighboring county to the north, Manatee County, but you have a much smaller school population, and you have only half as many children who qualify for free or reduced price lunch. Point 3, the tax is not equitable from the standpoint of differing houses built by differing builders in this community. I build and sell homes in Venice, Florida from $174,900 today. The tax on that $174,000 tax would be the same as the tax on the 30,000 square foot house being built at Lido Key. Almost all the consultants in our state currently propose, and Manatee County is now proposing, an impact fee which is based on the school size or the proposed impact which that house has on the school system. And that's required by our state constitution in a case called School Board of St. Johns County versus Aberdeen. I say that the lack of your including that in your study probably fails to meet the second leg of the dual rational nexus test. Next point, and probably the most important point. The morning paper, Mrs. Brown, said that our company had a record month in September, and we really did have a record month in September. But we're sure not selling homes to families in Sarasota County, Florida. Traditionally, our company has sold about 28 or 29% homes to first-time home buyers. As the statistics say, about 70% of our growth is for people 70 years and older. I'll close by saying this is a tax. It's not free money, Mr. Chairman.
Pete Logan, please, our final speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow school board members. My name is Pete Logan. I'm the president of Medallion Home. Briefly, in an attempt not to duplicate comments already put on the record, I'd like to voice our lack of support for the flawed plan of reinstating the proposed impact fees. We believe that the population growth projection used in the Tyndale-Oliver study are overstated. While we recognize that no one has a crystal ball and can predict the future, the use of growth rate percentages that we haven't seen since the boom is a bit inflated. Further, please consider the kind of population growth that we experience in Sarasota County. As much as we'd like to say we're getting younger as a community and diversifying our local economy, the increase in our local population growth is from the baby boomer demographic who are purchasing retirement and second homes. This demographic does not bring with them school-age children, as one would typically equate with the term population growth in other areas of the country. As evidence of this, and according to the Bureau of Economic Business Research, this county's median age is supposed to increase to 57.5 years old in 2020 and further to 60.7 years old in 2030. Of all the counties in the state of Florida, Sarasota has the third highest percentage of its population that exceeds the age of 65. To put this into context, we're tied with Sumter County, the location of the nationally recognized retirement community, the Villages. Today, about 30% of Florida's population is over 55. Comparatively, in Sarasota County, that number is nearly 50%. Florida's 55 and over population is set to increase from 30% to nearly 35% in 2020 and almost 38% in 2030. While I couldn't locate this level of detail specific to Sarasota County projections in the Bieber book, again, please consider the fact that we have the third highest percentage of population that exceed the age of 65 in the entire state, and we anticipate that that will continue to grow. Thus, I don't believe that a straight-line projection of increased need in school seats can be made without further breaking down the population growth projections into demographic segments and analyzing which segments actually bring school-age children with them when they move into our area. Secondly, increasing capacity is a need caused by an increase in the number of school-age children in our county. Only drawing on knowledge in our local construction industry, according to Dr. Hank Fishkind, in 2005 there was a construction workforce in our region of approximately 23,000 people. Today that number is only about 9,000, or about 40% of where we were. Those are the folks, that workforce, are the ones with school-age children. However, they left here during the Great Recession and moved to places like Texas and Arizona where the effects of the recession were less severe. Because there's no reason for them to leave those places, we're not seeing them come back here. Today, we're trying to hire employees, some contractors and vendors, and predominantly what we see are local people changing companies or young people who are trying to stay close to home and start their career. We are not seeing an influx of relocation inquiries looking for jobs. Again, these are folks with school-age children, not the people currently moving here. In closing, with the uncertainty in the information provided in the study and the continued uncertainty in our local industry, one good year in our industry does not make a trend. I ask that you consider extending the moratorium for 2 more years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes hearing of citizens. I don't usually make a habit of commenting on hearing of citizens, although when somebody tells a lie, an untruth, or as an attorney would say, stretches the truth, I just wanted to say that I'm also a realtor. I used to have my license with Mike Seary, who used to be Carol Todd's husband, who had Michael Seary Realty. So I had my license with Mike Seary Realty, which apparently Mike is considered a developer, which is news to me, and I haven't had my license with Mike for probably at least 3 years. So just wanted to clear the air, and I know how those guys can be, and I think that the truth matters even in politics. So we will move on to the consent agenda. I have no additions and corrections, so if I could have a motion for the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? You would vote, please. And that motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to new business. First item, new business, item 19.
Move approval of the new job description for planning technician.
Second.
I'd like to ask Roy Sprinkle to come forward for a short presentation. I'm sorry. That doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can come on up. If you would vote on item 19, please.
All right, thank you.
Hold on.
Okay.
And that motion passes 5-0. The item which I called Mr. Sprinkle forward for is item 20. If I could have a motion in a second, please.
I move for approval of the advertising of the 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018 school calendars as presented.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Sprinkle, would you like to comment on this?
I'd love to. It's been my pleasure.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. I'll move fast. I have chaired the calendar committee for the past 8 years. One of the things that we try to bring to you all is something that works best for children. The calendar committee is composed of a lot of different people. What we try to do is get representation from elementary, middle, and high teachers, as well as parents, and we always involve community members as well. This year we brought in, as we like to do, some advisors. So I had Joe Binswinger came in to help us out to make sure we got our report cards in on time and everything done in a timely manner that works. We have to present a calendar that's actually workable as well. Denise Cantalupo sits in on our meetings as well to help us out with testing issues, make sure that everything on the calendar is in line with all of the testing. Probably the biggest change you'll notice is that we are recommending to move up the school year by 1 week. What this allows us to do is actually end the semester at the winter break, which means that your high school students especially are not coming back after 2 weeks and testing a weekend after. This is pretty much the way it was done for most of the years that I can remember in education, where our semester ended the break. And also, if you'll notice at the end, both calendars has the last day for students ending the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, which is a little bit more traditional in the way it was done for many, many, many years. A lot of time goes into this from these individuals volunteering their time. We also always include the Teacher of the Year and the Classified Employee of the Year. So we have a wide variety of people that come together on this. It was complete consensus that this would be the calendar of their choice and what they thought would be best for students. And also putting a week also in front of testing by moving that up 1 more week as well doesn't hurt us either.
Caroline?
How many parents were on the committee, Roy?
I'd have to go back and look. I know I had one from North, one from South, and then several of our members were all not only teachers but parents, as myself, a parent of students here. So probably in all, I think 5 or 6 of the members had students in the system.
I'm happy with the fact that we're doing the testing before vacation. However, I've been receiving phone calls from parents regarding the fact that we're starting a week earlier. And I just wanted noted that I brought the concern to the board, and we talked about it this morning, and it's brought as a concern here now that there are parents that are not happy with having their summer cut short. But I agree with you for the testing in December. So it's really a catch-22.
Sure. And like I said, that at one point we extended the summer a week longer, probably I want to say 8-9 years ago, to comply with the Save Our Summers mandate, and now we're allowed to actually get it back to where it was for many, many years.
Thank you.
Ms. Ziegler?
Thank you. We did address this in our former workshop, and I think, to address what Ms. Zucker said, we did hear from parents, and I understand their concern. I traveled with my family a lot, and there's a lot of educational value in that over the summer. However, I remember hearing from students about the fact that they didn't finish their first semester until after winter break. And to me, the way I grew up, that was kind of mind-boggling. And I think I'm glad to see, without being a huge imposition on the summer schedule, that we're able to schedule it where it's almost the best of both worlds, if you will. So I'm very pleased with the efforts that you guys did. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Brown?
I too like that we get the end of the break at the end of the semester. I also like ending early. We're going to be getting out this year, or probably, next year, the Friday before Labor Day. So we'll have that last small week of May and, all of June off. So some people who travel, they get that extra week before everybody else and the other states get off. And that sometimes, if you're planning on traveling with family, that's a big bonus. And I support this, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thanks.
If you would vote on that item 20, please. That motion passes 5-0. If I could motion on item 21.
I would move that the appointment ad hoc committee for the professional services selection process be revised to change the participants and increase the number of committee members to 5.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? You would vote, please. Ms. Brown?
I just wanted to say that this is in response to some problems that we had with a recent bid, and we would like to see some of the things corrected so that we won't have these problems and won't have legal problems with bids in the future. Hopefully this will correct it.
If you would vote, please. And that motion passes 5-0. If I could have a motion on item 22, please.
I move the approval of the reinstatement of the impact fees that the Board of Sarasota County School Board recommend the Sarasota County Board of Commissioners amend the educational impact fee ordinance to change the levied amount of educational system impact fee as follows. Single family home, $3,917 per dwelling unit, multifamily home, $1,082 per dwelling unit, and mobile home, $362 per dwelling unit.
Have a second? I do not have a second. Does anybody else have a motion to make?
I move for approval of a motion that would sunset the moratorium and bring back the $2,032 level that we had previously, and do that at the earliest time possible.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that for the purpose of discussion.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Ziegler.
I know we went over, and I guess I addressed my concerns at our workshop this morning, and specifically as it relates to the likely generation of students from the new construction. I think that I have concerns with the equitability of the tax, and essentially, I also have an ethical issue on how these taxes are assessed. I understand the significance, and I don't take that lightly about the quality of our education system and the facilities in which our students are in. My child will be part of that, so I don't take that lightly. However, I really believe that we need to reassess, especially when there are concerns about the growth rate that we'd be considering. I think that there's no doubt that the economy has been bouncing back, but I am of the agreement that we're not right there quite yet. So from an economic impact, I'm concerned with the tax burden this may be. My motion, I would move to extend, so I would make a substitute motion if this one fails, and it would be, I would move to extend the moratorium of new construction impact fees for 2 years.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand what that just was.
You can't do it. There's a motion on the floor.
We're dealing with the motion on the floor. Do I have any other further comments on the motion on the floor?
Well, the reason I made the motion was I really feel that we are at a point in the change or the turnaround and growth in this county that we really need to go back and have an impact fee. And I know there are 8 different impact fees that people are forced to pay. in new construction and other things in this county. But we have had a moratorium for 5 years, and we have run out of money, and we are going to have to buy some land. My idea is that we do not let any of our maintenance on our buildings go into a disarray, that we keep with our 5-year plan of growth, and that we do majority of the financing through our certificates of participation, which is borrowing money as we need them for new construction. However, I really feel that, and I have a torn heart about this, because I certainly have an affiliation with the building industry folks, having worked in that industry myself. But I think that $2,032 is not a great deal of money to pass on to a new home, and I think it will help us to start forward with new construction that we must take into consideration in the next 10 years. We are definitely in deficit in a very short period of time in our elementary and our high schools. Our middle schools are the only places that we have much space for growth in the future, and I think high schools will probably be the first step that we'll need to provide additional classrooms. So I think this is a perfect start point, and we'll see if this will fly, and if so, then we're all set with that, or we go to a different motion. But this is the motion that we need to vote on at this point.
Mrs. Zucker?
Well, I liken this. We had a superintendent who talked about the three-legged stool. Well, that's what we have here. We have a three-legged stool. 3 ways that we can raise money: capital millage, a quarter of the 1-cent sales tax, and impact fees. It would be tragic if the legislature eliminated any one funding source for us. Why should we eliminate a funding source for the district's capital budget? It will take us years to be able to accumulate sufficient dollars to be able to build a school with the suggested impact fee that has been of $2,032. It's unfortunate that our economic viability is tied to property tax and sales tax. In a down economy, everyone suffers, including the schools. If we plan accordingly, we can get ahead of the economic downturn that is sure to come again, and we all know it will come again, because this has been the 3rd time within 30 years that has been hit by us. If we were able to assess the 2 mills for capital mills instead of the 1.5 that the legislature mandated we move back to, if we had that extra 0.5 mills that the legislature took away, we would not switch to operating funds. We would not need to worry. We could build as we went. Unfortunately, when the capital millage was reduced by half a mil, it limited our ability to build schools without impact fees. We have had 5 years with no impact fee. And I'll tell you, this was not an easy thing for me. I have 2 scenarios up here, which meant that coming into this meeting, I could have gone either way. Because I didn't know which is right and wrong. And I found my pin. And my pin says that I will make the right decisions. I will make the difference for students. And I always have to remember that students have to come first whenever I make a decision. And this decision that I'm making is based on the students' needs, or what I perceive as the students' needs for the future. And I'm sorry that I can't vote the other way, but my conscience just would not allow it. And this is, again, I tell you, this is not an easy decision for me. I have suffered tremendously inside over the last 2 years, over this 2 weeks, over this decision. But I've come to believe that the implementation of the moratorium should be over, and we should reassess and take in impact fees for $2,032. So I would agree with the motion that's on the floor.
Ms. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I too wanted to correct a few statements that were made. It was said that an impact fee would affect affordable home prices more disproportionately. The impact fee that we have, the ordinance, exempts affordable housing. It also exempts elderly housing. It also has a different fee for homes, multifamily and mobile homes, because they generate different students there. So I wanted to clear that up. And there also was some concern about how the economy failed or floundered. And I'm not sure if that builder was here during that time or not, but we as a school board took it upon ourselves to do things that we could to help the industry. And one of those was, even though the borrowing ability or the taxing ability was reduced, we still went forward with borrowing dollars to invest in our schools, but also to help our development community keep those jobs and keep those employees working. So I don't think we ever turned our back on our development community in this area. We did everything we could to help you. We also did the waive the impact fee for 5 years so that we could do everything we could to help prop up the business. And it also was said that, not exactly how he phrased it, but basically that we're bought and paid for by developers. Developers contribute to us, and that's why we vote the way we do. The largest developer to my campaign supports impact fees. You can talk to Mr. Rex Jensen, Lakewood Ranch. He feels that it's not an issue of regional impact, but that builders should pay the impact fees on the impact that they put on a community. So not all developers are against impact fees. Not all business people, not all realtors are against impact fees. We do have some that are against it. I have no problem with that. And there seems to be some, we throw around the word tax and fees and how those are different. When I put on my hat when I was in the legislature, we tried to look at what the difference between a tax and a fee was. A tax is something that basically you levy all people based either on income or property values. That's the tax. You issue a fee or levy a fee on those people who will be affected by whatever it is you're looking at. Only those people who drive an automobile pay for the license plates. Only those who have a new home pay the impact fee. It's not a tax on everyone. It's a fee on the homes. And yes, it's something you pay, and it's not free money, as Mr. Kovats said earlier. Somebody pays that money. So those paying it feel like it's a tax, but it's not taxed on everyone. It's taxed on a certain portion. Things have changed the way we do things, but I have a question to ask of our attorney before I vote on this, and that is this motion, it was my understanding that if we took no action, or if the vote failed on the vote that was before us, we would by default go back to the old impact fee we had unless an action was taken to extend the moratorium. So what effect would this vote have if it passed or it failed? I mean, wouldn't either way we'd go back to the old fee?
Well, if no action is taken, the moratorium goes away in mid-December, and the old fees would come back. However, you now have the new study, so by taking action, I think it would be based on the new study that you have. And I also asked to be recognized to ask for a clarification of the motion. I think we're all talking because we know what we're talking about. We're talking in shorthand a little. The number that's been put out there in the motion and discussed is the 2032. And as we all know, that's the pre-existing impact fee on single-family homes. I am assuming, and would like to make sure my assumption is correct, that the motion would be that you would request the county commission to reinstitute impact fees of 2032 for the single-family home, and also reinstitute the impact fees at the same level for the multifamily and the mobile homes as well at the same level. I just want to make sure
That's my motion.
that was
Correct.
not stated.
Correct.
But whether or not this passes, it goes back to that?
If this passes, then that would be the request that's being made. If nothing were to pass, then the moratorium would simply go away, and those old numbers, which happen to be the same numbers as in this motion, would come back. I think the fact that you are considering the affirmative action of asking for these numbers is better than simply letting the moratorium go away, because you are doing it based on explicitly, you might be doing it implicitly otherwise, but explicitly based on your new report. Certainly, if those were the numbers back, however they got there, and if they were challenged, they would be defended based on the new report. I think this makes it clear. Of course, if this motion does not pass, certainly at least one other motion we heard will be made. If that passes, that would, be a different affirmative action. So it's just a question of what at least three or more of you can agree on. And the only way we can know that, I suppose, is for there to be motions and votes.
Okay. Well, it puts me in an awkward position because, as my previous motion, things aren't the way they were in their last growth spurt. Back then, we had 2 mills that we could levy for capital, and that was $120 million. Today, the legislature has reduced that. It's 1.5 mills. With the reduced property values, that's only $65 million a year. That's half of what we had then. We also had new charter schools. There was something we didn't have. Those charter schools helped absorb the growth that we had. So we've seen a stalled. I mean, we haven't had new charter schools this year, and only one small one last year. I don't know that we're going to see that same growth in charter schools. And private schools also have not seen a growth. That we are actually, I don't know what it is in Sarasota County, but statewide, the enrollment in private schools, what it was 10 years ago, is higher than what it is today. That was through the Department of Education. So I have concerns about trying to base the growth on that. But even looking at the study that, what was their name? Ms. Gallo presented, the Bureau of Economic Business Resources, says that in the next 20 years, even under their low numbers, we're looking at over 5,000 students. 5,000 students may not look like much to all, but every 800 kids is a new elementary school. That's a lot of elementary schools, and they have to be paid for. I don't support the motion that I seconded, truly, but I will vote for it, only to put my emphasis that we still need an impact fee. I'm sorry we weren't able to take the superintendent's recommendation, which I felt would have been justified, but at least we will have the updated report and we'll be able to move forward.
Well, I have to kind of look at what it is we're trying to do here, and we're trying to raise money to build new schools for growth of students, which has been what has happened for ever since time began in Sarasota, I guess you could say. So how do we do that equitably? We've already exempted, actually, because there was a lawsuit, we exempt 55-plus communities that don't allow students. So they're exempted. We're exempting affordable housing, which in my opinion is going to be more than likely where children with kids move to, which I thought were the ones we're supposed to be taxing because we need new schools for their students. One of the speakers asked earlier, where are the taxpayers? Well, by looking at those cards, every single one of the speakers except for one that I believe is a Sarasota County taxpayer. So every person that spoke at that podium today was a taxpayer. There seems to be this feeling that the big bad developers are the ones that get hurt and have to pay the impact fees. My daughter built a new house last year, And as part of her permit, she had to pay the full array of impact fees, and it was on a undeveloped piece of property in East County. And my daughter was born here and has kids in the school district. So I'm not sure how we call that equitable. We did hear from large development concerns today. We also heard from very small builders who are business people in Sarasota County that are going to be affected. My daughter's house was built by a very small builder in Sarasota County. So I go back to what I said. We talk about this rational nexus, and I just use the term rational. If we're trying to collect taxes for people that move here, that bring students to our district and require us to build more schools, I just feel like we're throwing an awfully large net clear across the county when we know full and well what areas that people move to put children in our schools in other areas. I just have a real issue with this. I just don't know how we get to the point where somebody that's lived here almost 60 years, if I build a house next year, I would be expected to pay an educational impact fee when we exempt people that build in 55-plus neighborhoods. It makes no sense. So any motion that we have here today that includes impact fees, even though, Mr. Loback, I do not work for a developer, never have worked for a developer, I'm not going to support impact fees or construction taxes or whatever else we want to call them. Ms. I'm sorry, Ms. Ziegler, were you on there? I thought I saw you and then you were gone. Okay. Ms. Zucker.
I believe that the reason that we have to increase our impact fees right now or implement impact fees right now is that it's going to take us years to be able to accumulate sufficient amount of dollars to build a school. And I think putting in the lower rate is the fair way to go because I'm not sure of the need that we have to build schools right now. So how in good conscience could I ever vote for almost $4,000 tax increase? I couldn't. But I can agree to the $2,032 based on the fact that we will need schools for our kids. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming and for all of you for speaking. And even though you don't agree with my vote, I want to thank you for coming and talking to us and telling us what you believe. I appreciate it.
Okay, I have no further requests to speak, except for Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Chair, I've been informed that the numbers, the raw numbers, the 2,032, et cetera, represents approximately, and I don't have the math in front of me, 26%. I think it's within a tenth of a point, 26% of the figure that was consulted or that was listed by the consultant's report. And I believe it would be, I think Ms. Ebaugh is bringing up the specific numbers, but it would probably be better to tie it to that percentage. I think you get to the same place. If that's where the board wants to wind up, I think we need to look at the specific percentage, and Ms. Ebaugh, I think, is prepared to tell us what that is because she has a calculator and I don't.
Good afternoon.
She's done it.
Good afternoon, Kathy Ebaugh, Director of Planning. We want to make sure that as you move forward with this, that we meet the proportionality test of impact fees. So if it is your intent to go back to a 2032 level at single family, proportionally, that's 26% of the legally defensible number as per the study. So that would mean at the multifamily level, it would be a $561 assessment, and at the multifamily level, it would be $188. So that means that all three levels are 26% of your legally defensible number.
You just said multi-level twice.
Multifamily would be $561.
Right.
Mobile home would be $188, which is slightly different than what the original study was. So if that is your intent to go back to the 2032 level at single family, at the multifamily level it would be $561, and at the mobile home level, it would be $188. Thank you.
Anything further?
So I think we need to be clear then, if the motion on the floor is to request the Board of County Commission to amend the impact fee ordinance to state those amounts of money for the various levels, the single family, the multifamily, and the mobile home that Ms. Ebaugh just mentioned, which was, I believe, $2,032 for single family, $561 for multifamily, and $188 for mobile home.
Shall I restate the motion?
I think she'd have to withdraw it, wouldn't she?
Well, I think you can withdraw your, I think the previous motion was unclear.
Yes.
I think you can withdraw, well, you can restate your motion.
I move for approval or reinstatement of the impact fees established in 2004. Single family in the amount of $2,032 per dwelling for single family dwelling. Multifamily, $561 per dwelling unit. Mobile home, $188 per dwelling unit.
Excuse me. They're saying that they don't want us to use the old numbers. They want us to use 26% of the new number.
Excuse me. Those were the proportionate share of the numbers that Ms. Ebaugh just stated. So if you're trying to get back basically to where you were with 2,032 as your baseline for the single family, that is the appropriate percentage for each of the three levels.
At 26%.
Approximately.
Yes.
Which is the motion Ms. Goodwin just made.
Correct.
Now, do we need a second
You
on
do.
that?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Marshall, do we have this on computer? We need voice vote. Voice vote. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Passion. Motion passes 3-2. That concludes our new business portion. Do we have any announcements or communications? Next regularly scheduled, we have a school board members retreat October 27th, 2015 from 9 to 4:30 at the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. Our next regularly scheduled school board meeting November 3rd, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. We're adjourned.